Well, it is that time of the offseason yet again. Should the Detroit Lions re-sign Za'Darius Smith to be an edge rusher on this Detroit Lions defense? And in particular, after the comments he made about wanting to come home to Detroit and hopefully he gets the chance to be a Lion yet again, do the Detroit Lions have to reconsider bringing in a player that is so passionate about the city and wants so clearly to be a Detroit Lion? Now, over the last couple of days, Za'Darius Smith has been very clear about what he wants this offseason. He wants to be in Detroit. He wants to be a Lion. He feels like the Lions are a place that he can be a leader, a contributor, and win a Super Bowl. Those are all things he's looking to do before hanging up his cleats for retirement. So, should they do it? Should the Detroit Lions bring back Za'Darius Smith? How much would it cost? And do things change after the Frank Ragnow retirement? Those are all things we're going to be taking a look at, starting off with the trade for Za'Darius Smith, because he didn't come to the Detroit Lions for free. He came in the package at the trade deadline when the Detroit Lions gave away a 6th and a 5th round pick in return from Za'Darius Smith from the Cleveland Browns. Now, Za'Darius Smith was off to a very good season. Cleveland may have only been 2-7, but Za'Darius Smith as an individual was playing quite well. In his 9 games with Cleveland in 2025, he totaled 23 tackles, 5 sacks, 6 TFLs, and 7 quarterback hits. He was a player at the deadline that almost everybody saw coming. It was a big rumor for multiple days before the deadline, and everybody kind of predicted it correctly that Za'Darius Smith would be a Lion. They identified it as a fit. They saw it as a great opportunity for both sides, and rarely, something that doesn't happen very often, both NFL teams seemed to agree. They made the deal happen, and they sent Za'Darius Smith from a 2-7 Cleveland Browns team to an 8-1 Detroit Lions team who was going on the road to Houston. Now, Za'Darius Smith didn't play in that first Houston game. He didn't end up playing until the following Thursday afternoon when the Detroit Lions played the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. And from there, everything kind of started to go the Detroit Lions' way. In 2025, Za'Darius Smith with the Detroit Lions played in 8 games for the team, totaled 12 tackles, 4 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 10 quarterback hits. In less games with the Detroit Lions and with less help around him, Za'Darius Smith actually had more quarterback hits than he did in the 9 games for Cleveland in the games prior. Throughout his time in Detroit, Za'Darius Smith was impactful across a number of games. He had a half a sack in his first career start with the Lions against the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had a sack and a half just 2 years later on Thanksgiving versus the Chicago Bears, and had a sack in the final regular season game to help seal the Detroit Lions' #1 seeding in the NFC playoff race. He had 2 plush pressures in every single game he played in Detroit, and actually had a quarterback hit in 6 of the 8 games that he played for the Detroit Lions. By far, he was the Detroit Lions' best pass rusher after Aidan Hutchinson. He was very good. He got to the quarterback consistently, and he was a true threat for the Detroit Lions throughout his time in Detroit. In the end, his season came out to a pretty respectable year for a player at 32 years old. 17 games played, 35 tackles, 9 sacks, 9 TFLs, 17 quarterback hits, and a pass defended. The question has never been whether or not Za'Darius Smith was worth it for the Detroit Lions. The question was never whether he was a good player or a bad player, or whether he would even start with Detroit. The question has always been the price, because from what it seems, Za'Darius Smith views himself as a $10 to $12 million edge rusher, a double-digit pass rusher who is projected to be paid like one of the best edge rusher 2s in the league. The Detroit Lions don't seem to want to pay that price. They are again, just in a concept and kind of from what it seems, they're looking for an edge rusher closer to the $5 to $7 million mark, which is what the rumors have been as of recently. However, Za'Darius Smith says he wants to be a Detroit Lion, and the Detroit Lions have said that they want Za'Darius Smith to return, that they've been in contact with his agent, and at this point, it is really on Za'Darius Smith to make a decision. I don't think the Detroit Lions are going to budge. There is not a whole lot of evidence to say that Brad Holmes is a type of GM or a type of leader that budges in this type of situation. He knows what he thinks of Za'Darius Smith. He knows what he values Za'Darius Smith to be. And it just doesn't seem like a very likely scenario to which where the Detroit Lions would spend extra money that they feel Za'Darius has not earned or deserved to make him a Detroit Lion when they very clearly feel pretty comfortable with the players that they have in place. Now, Za'Darius Smith has been seen all around Detroit this offseason. He's been at Pistons games, he's been at Tigers games, he's been seen in the city, and as of recently, even as early as yesterday, he came out and said that hopefully he can get back to Detroit. He wants to be a Detroit Lion, and the full quote goes as such. He says, hopefully I can get back to Detroit because the coaching staff and everybody in the front office is great. When I'm there, I feel like a leader. I feel like I can influence the younger players and do great things. Hopefully I can get back to where I want to be, and that is Detroit. Those are the words that Za'Darius Smith has said about the team. And for a player that is infamous for going around the NFL and feeling disrespected, for feeling dropped off, for feeling really negative emotions for every team that's ever dropped him, from Baltimore to Green Bay to Minnesota to the Cleveland Browns, every single team he seems to leave in free agency or leave via a trade, he has a really poor relationship with. He publicly says negative things about that team, and it's kind of become a meme across the NFL at some point in time. But that doesn't seem to be the case in Detroit. There seems to be some kind of mutual respect and mutual understanding that both sides want to be together, but there's just a little bit of a gap between financially where both sides feel like they can be. Now, if Za'Darius Smith is to join the Detroit Lions, I don't think Brad Holmes is going to be the one to budge. I think in this staring contest, Za'Darius Smith is going to be the first one to blink. And I think he's waiting to get through minicamp. He's waiting to get through OTAs. He's waiting to get to training camp to see if the Detroit Lions are going to budge, to see if they'll pitch him $1, $2, $3 more million to come be a Lion again and add him to the roster. I don't think that will happen, but I don't think other teams are budging on Za'Darius Smith either. I don't think there are other football teams out there truly considering giving Za'Darius Smith $10, $12, $13 million to be that top tier edge rusher too, because he is 33. He is past his prime, and they don't know how long Za'Darius Smith is going to have left on his contract or how much tread he has left on the tires. There are pros to this situation. He has widely been healthy across his career. He's a good leader. He's a good veteran. He's a pretty productive pass rusher throughout his career. But again, the cons potentially outweigh it. He's 32 years old, could be 33 by the end of the NFL season. He is very expensive for the player in the age range that he is, and he has a limited role. There were games last season where Za'Darius Smith was playing less than 40% of the defensive snaps for the Detroit Lions, and that just isn't something the Detroit Lions feel comfortable investing $10 to $12 million in. Za'Darius Smith is a veteran. It doesn't necessarily surprise me he hasn't signed with a football team yet, and it really doesn't surprise me that he wants to be with the Detroit Lions. He wants to win a ring before he retires. He wants to win that Super Bowl championship, and I think the Lions are going to be his best opportunity to do it. And when push comes to shove, when the NFL season is just 4 weeks away, when training camp gets underway, when joint practices get started, and Za'Darius Smith has to make a decision to affect his career, I think he's going to blink and he's going to lower his offer and he will be a Detroit Lion. That is what my gut feeling says. Now, I'm not going back on what I've said in the past. I don't think the Detroit Lions necessarily need Za'Darius Smith as much as Za'Darius Smith needs the Detroit Lions. He wants to win a ring. He wants to be that leader. He wants to impact the young players, and he can do that, but he's going to have to take a little bit of a pay cut. And I don't see Brad Holmes blinking in this situation. So, at the end of things, should the Detroit Lions sign Za'Darius Smith? Should they sign him? Yes or no? Should they go with the former Pro Bowler and the player that was by far the best pass rusher outside of Aidan Hutchinson down the stretch a season ago? Or do they trust the players that they have? Do they trust Ahmad Hassanin to develop? Do they trust Al-Quadin Muhammad to continue where he was a season ago and even match the pace of Za'Darius Smith down the last 7 games of the season? Do they trust Josh Paschal? Do they trust Marcus Davenport to stay healthy? Those are all very serious questions that the Detroit Lions absolutely have to answer. But one very important thing to keep in mind is that those 4 players, Marcus Davenport, Al-Quadin Muhammad, Josh Paschal, and Ahmad Hassanin, are all cheaper than what Za'Darius Smith is going to cost just by himself. Do those 4 edge rushers outweigh the value of Za'Darius Smith? Or does Za'Darius Smith truly have enough to bring to the table that the Lions can feel comfortable putting him in on early downs, putting him in often, and earning that $10 to $12 million? It's truly a question of value. And I don't know who's going to blink first, but it will be something to keep an eye on over the next couple of days. So let me know down in the comments below. Should the Detroit Lions sign Za'Darius Smith? Does the Frank Ragnow retirement, getting back between $5 to $10 million, make that deal a little bit sweeter for the Detroit Lions and allow them to give Za'Darius Smith a little bit extra on the top? That is a very interesting question as well. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But let me know down in the comments below. Do you want to re-sign Za'Darius Smith? Should the Detroit Lions continue to add to their defense, or do you trust the system that they have in place? I'd love to hear you guys' opinions down in the comments below. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.